Hi everyone, welcome to Newegg TV. My name is Paul. Today I'm going to be doing an unboxing and overview of this motherboard from ASUS. This is the ASUS Maximus V FORMULA. And just to clarify, there's a couple different versions of this available. The motherboard itself, the Maximus V FORMULA, remains the same for both versions, but you can get the Maximus V FORMULA by itself. You can also get the FORMULA/THUNDERFX, which is the version that we're showing here. So throughout this video, I'll be kind of separating, here's what you get with the formula, here's what you get with the combo pack. So let's start off with a closer look at the retail box and also some more explanation of where this board is coming from, because ASUS is very particular a lot of the time about how they design their motherboards, specifically for the folks who they think will get the best use out of them, the best use of the features they integrate, as well as, well, all the high-end features that are part of the Republic of Gamers series of motherboards, because ASUS likes to put all of their highest-end stuff, all of their best work into the r.o.g series. Has a black and red color scheme, of course, but beyond that, this is a Maximus V FORMULA, and this one is designed for gamer enthusiasts. It's designed to hit a segment of the market that really is looking for really high-end gaming machines. Not the highest of the high-end. You'll notice there's also a Maximus V Extreme motherboard that is still forthcoming from ASUS. Hasn't been released yet. Perhaps it is by the time this video comes out, but we'll come back to all that because there's lots to talk about with this board. Now, this is a socket 1155 motherboard. It supports Intel 2nd and 3rd generation core processors. That means you can fit a Ivy Bridge or a Sandy Bridge processor in here, although chances are you're going to be going with an Ivy Bridge if you're purchasing this board new because, well, who knows, maybe you have a Sandy Bridge lying around you can use. Either way, it still works, but Ivy Bridge is probably the best implementation because it has a Z77 chipset, which gives you some additional features. Of course, it also supports NVIDIA SLI, so you can do two-way SLI setup. Also supports AMD Crossfire X for 2- or 3-way Crossfire X configurations. You also get Virtue MVP, which is basically GPU virtualization. It can actually use the integrated GPU that comes with a Sandy Bridge or Ivy Bridge processor to boost your gaming performance of the discrete video card that you will no doubt end up installing in this motherboard. On the first flap, we have some sort of high-level features. I'm going to point these all out, and then we're going to come into much more detail with them as I get the motherboard out of the box. So Supreme FX 4 is audio, and with the last gen of the r.o.g series of motherboards, ASUS went for the best-in-class integrated audio. What they're going for with Supreme FX 4 is essentially discrete level audio, so the same type of audio experience that you could only get by actually purchasing a separate add-on sound card, and there's lots of reasons why they've actually done a great job implementing that. You also have Fusion Thermo, which is their VRM cooling assembly. It's dual use, it's patent pending, and it works great as an air cooler, or if you happen to be building a water cooling system, it works even better with water cooling. You also have a combo port, which is a little riser card near the back I/O. That's MPCIe combo plus dual band Wi-Fi Bluetooth 4.0. So that gives you a little riser card that you can fit. Well, it comes pre-installed with a Pci Express dual band wireless card. Also has an mSATA port on the other side, which you can connect a mSATA SSD to. Game First 2 is a packet shaping and prioritization software implementation that works with the included network cards or wireless cards in the motherboard, but also you can use with any other wireless or network solution. Essentially, this is going to make sure that your gaming packets are prioritized over others. Also, a lot of other features you can adjust with that in the settings. You also have Lucid Logic's Virtue MVP. Again, that will allow you to switch back and forth between the your discrete graphics card and the integrated GPU on your Sandy Bridge or Ivy Bridge processor. It can also be used, the Virtue MVP is the sort of more advanced version of this that can actually boost your frame rate in games you play by sort of using the power of both to give you better frame rates. I'll come back to that as well. You also get a Diablo 3 mousepad, which is a nice little value-added item. It's located in here. There's the motherboard itself. We're going to come back to that. Then here's some more information about the THUNDERFX external DAC, or digital to analog converter. This is a external sound device. You can use it with the system that you build with this motherboard. You can also use it with an Xbox or PlayStation 3. Provides greatly enhanced audio experience, particularly if you're going to be using headphones. Finally, down here at the bottom, We have some value-added software, so you get a full year of Kaspersky Antivirus, which is one of the best AV programs out there, especially if you go by ASUS's ratings. They spent about the last year or two monitoring or basically pinging people on their forums at gaming events to say what's the best AV suite out there if you want a non-free one, and Kaspersky was at the top of the list, so they've included a full year license for that. You also get Daemon Tools Pro Standard, and that's essentially a great tool that you can use. So if you have, for instance, an ISO disk image or something along those lines, you can virtually mount it, and that'll help you from having to swap out CDs and DVDs into your system. Nice little added piece of software there. And then if you haven't checked it out, CPU-Z has actually also launched a version of CPU-Z with an r.o.g skin, so it matches your computer system. Inside the retail box, we have two boxes. This one has the motherboard. We're going to save that for last because it's the best part. We're going to go over accessories first, and there's quite a few in here. You get an r.o.g metallic case badge sticker, as well as some detailed instructions on applying that properly. Note that it is not a temporary tattoo. Also, you get a Do Not Disturb I'm Gaming doorknob hanger, so people don't walk in on you while you're gaming. You also have an r.o.g Connect USB cable because sometimes USB A to A cables are hard to find. This will allow you to plug in via the special USB port on the back of the motherboard to a separate laptop, and you can use that to get much more detailed monitoring of BIOS UEFI type events. Make sure that everything's going right, and you can also do, well, there's lots of stuff you can do with the r.o.g Connect cable. It's pretty cool. You also have a couple leads here. These are to connect to the included Wi-Fi card, which is in there. Let me pull that out in just a moment. Also, you have two separate antenna, so you can use the cables to position those out and away from your computer to get the best Wi-Fi signal possible. You have Q connectors here. The white one is the best one because that is for all your front panel connectors. You plug your connectors into that, then plug the block into the board. It's one of the best things ever. You also have a blue one there for USB. I find that I use that much less frequently because most USB front panel headers come in a little block already. But if you happen to have one of the ones that have all of the little leads separate, you can use that one too. You also have a rear panel input-output shield. They have this nice squishy foam padding on here, which is nice and feels soft. It also performs a useful function in that it provides additional electromagnetic shielding, especially for the area near the inputs and outputs at the back of the case. That's a great feature to have right there. Of course, also all of your inputs and outputs, as far as plugs go, are clearly labeled on the input and output shields. You get serial ATA cables. You get 6 in total. All 6 of them have L brackets on one end. You'll notice the ones with the white plugs on the end here are rated for SATA revision 3, that's 6 gigabit per second, SATA 6G. You also have SATA Rev 2, that's 3G cables here. Chances are these will work just fine for SATA 6G as well. It's only very, very rare circumstances where you need rated SATA 6G cables. But you have all those for your options. You have a set of stickers here. I love these stickers because they let you label all your SATA cables, and that way as you're plugging and unplugging stuff, you don't have to trace them all back to their source. You can tell what's plugged in where. You also have, of course, your user guide, which is just massive. There's a ton of information in here covering all of the features that they've added. You also get this disc, which has the software, some of the software I mentioned on the box, as well as all the drivers, as well as stuff like the ASUS AI Suite. You can load stuff off of this disc. It's best to go to the ASUS. You can go to support.asus.com to download most of the drivers and stuff. And I'm trying to get the case badge. Let me just fish it out here so you guys can see. If you've never seen this, is the r.o.g case badge. If you're into case badges, put it on your case. And definitely check out the software on that, or download the AI Suite software, because there's a lot of features of the board that you can't access except through AI Suite 2. Speaking of the motherboard manual here, if you flip into just the first few pages, that sort of has a list of all of the included componentry, as well as specifics like what SATA controllers are being used and that sort of thing. All the specs, walkthrough of installation. You must keep that on hand while you're building your computer, because it's really, really handy. You also have an Sli Bridge that's included. It's black. It says r.o.g on it. it's very appealing. It's a flexible one, so you can actually extend it to cover all of your PCI Express ports, or you can double it up like that if you are plugging them in closer together. That is all the accessories that you would get with the standard, just the Maximus V Formula by itself. These last three are part of the ThunderFX version, so you get a ThunderFX cable. That's USB, simply two USB plugs into one USB plug, and that will provide additional power to the ThunderFX module because it's a separate external breakout box. You also have an 1/8 inch, what appears to be an 1/8 inch audio cable there to connect to your ThunderFX. And then you also have, this looks to be, I believe this is an Xbox adapter because it is compatible with Xbox, so you can use that to connect to that, and that way you will use the ThunderFX module for enhanced audio. Here's that MPCIe combo card, and what essentially this is a riser card. It plugs into the back of the board here near the inputs and outputs. Has a screw right there so you can secure it securely, and it's a dual-use card. So here we have pre-installed a Broadcom Wi-Fi adapter, and this is dual band, so it will operate on the 2.4 or 5 gigahertz band, 802.11n support, so get plenty of Wi-Fi bandwidth there. The two little nubs right there can connect to these little extenders, and then those connect to those two antennae that I showed you, the two white circular antenna that I showed you in the retail box. So you can pop that out if you want. This is a MPCIe slot right there, so you could swap it out for a different one if you're so inclined, but out of the box here you do have Wi-Fi connectivity. On the opposite side is actually mSATA. Now if you're not familiar with MPCIe or mSATA, physically they're the same actual plug. mSATA is just rewired for SATA connectivity. So what you can do with this is actually install a little mSATA SSD, and that works great, especially if you want to set up, for instance, smart response technology caching, which is a feature that's enabled by the Z77 chipset on the board. So tiny little SSD right there, and frees up some the other ports on the board, and makes it so you can do cool stuff like boot up into your OS without actually plugging in any other SATA devices. Great for use with caching. Bear in mind that this mSATA port will route through and connect to the peripheral controller hub that's part of the Z77 chipset, and that will give you essentially SATA Rev 2 3 gigabit per second connectivity. And here's our first full look at the Maximus V Formula. As you can see, sticking with the r.o.g theme, it is black and red throughout, and of course one of the most predominant features is the Fusion Thermo Combo Vrm Cooler right up there at the top. Black and red on that, as well as a black heatsink right there above the Z77 chipset. Also right here in the center is another part of the Fusion Thermo cooling solution. Although this one isn't wired in with the rest of the heatsink, this has the r.o.g logo on it. It's plugged in right here, and that logo will light up and pulse when the motherboard is powered on. You can unplug it right there if you prefer not to have that lit up, although I don't know why you do that. Flipping around here on the back, as you can see, the PCB itself also all black. It's nice, thick, sturdy design. They've used Phillips head screws to mount some of the heat sinks on here, and they also have a support plate behind that Fusion Thermo Combo Vrm Cooler to make sure that it stays on, but you can remove it if it ever comes to that. Next up, let me talk about the fan headers on the board. There are 8 of them total. They're all 4-pin connectors, and they're all fully compatible with the Fan Expert 2 software. That's part of the ASUS AI Suite 2 software. So if you install that, what that does is it reaches out to all the fans you have connected to the board, tests their RPM, so no matter what types of fans you're using, it will test their minimum and maximum RPMs, and then it can adjust the fan speeds to make sure that they stay quiet while also moving plenty of air. So that said, 2 up here for your CPU. So that's 1, 2. A third one here, chassis fan 2. A fourth one right here next to the 24-pin main power connector. Next to that, you also have a temperature header. There's also 3 temperature headers on the board. You have a 5th fan header down here at the bottom. There's a 2nd temperature header right next to that. You have a 6th fan header right here in the bottom middle. And then you have 7 and 8 right here to the left of the topmost PCI Express slot, and that is also where your 3rd temperature readout header is. Now let's take a more granular look at the motherboard. We're starting in the very lower right hand side, and first off you have your front panel connectors right there. They're labeled just underneath them. That is where you will plug in that Q connector that I showed you guys earlier. Next to that, the fan header and the temperature connector that I mentioned just moments ago. You also have a TPM header right there, Trusted Platform Module. If you're familiar with that, you have one available. There's your optional fan out. Here is your Thunderbolt header. This board is, of course, completely Thunderbolt capable. You do need to purchase a separate Thunderbolt card, but if you purchase one from ASUS, then you route the extender cable over to that, and then you can get Thunderbolt, which is a pretty awesome interconnect. You also have USB 2.0, so you got two front panel USB 2.0 pinouts right there, so that'll support up to 4 more USB 2.0 connectors. There's the fan header that I mentioned that's in the bottom center. Here is what is labeled as the Easy Plug. This is actually a Molex connector. If I tilt it up, you probably can see. Standard Molex. That's going to provide additional power to the PCI Express lanes up here. In most situations, you will not need to plug that in. If you've maxed out the board as far as what you've got connected to it, or if you're running a really heavy GPU load, like for instance, if you're going with quad SLI with 2 dual GPU video cards, if you're running triple Crossfire X, you might need to plug that in. Over here you have a SPDIF out. Next to that you have your front panel audio connector, so you can use that to connect to your case's front panel mic and headphone jacks. And then if you'll notice, running right around that audio front panel connector, there's a little line, and that line is red line shielding, and essentially this entire area of the PCB is separated. You'll notice that line keeps going up all the way up the side of the motherboard. And what that is essentially going to do is reduce the interference from the electrical componentry in the rest of the motherboard from the audio area, the integrated audio area here, over here on the left side, which is the Supreme Effects for Perfect Audio solution that ASUS has implemented here. Essentially what ASUS wants to do is rival discrete audio cards with the integrated audio solution that they have right here. So this is going to be able to provide, for example, the full rated decibel output from the codec here. So we have an HD audio codec chip right there under the Supreme Effects logo, and this little box in there is some added electromagnetic shielding for that. They have been very careful in the componentry they've selected for this area. So all these capacitors down here are not the standard Nichicon caps that are in the rest of the board. These are specially selected ELNA audio caps. Provide very clean audio that allows you a lower noise floor. It increases the availability, it increases your dynamic range. And then you also notice this big old cap right there. That's a 1500 UF massive cap. And essentially, as you are gaming or listening to movies or listening to MP3s, audio, whatever, especially if you're going to go for high definition, lossless audio, FLAC type files, you're going to have a much wider range of sound coming out. Now, if you're doing any of that and you're actually at an area where there's not much sound, you might not need much power delivered to the actual audio codec chip. However, if suddenly the sound gets much louder, you have a greatly increased frequency range. And this 1500 UF cap there has a lot of stored capacitance to be able to, at the bat of an eye, deliver that capacitance to the chip to provide you that enhanced frequency range. They've also done PCB shielding for this entire area, and again, that's just to provide greater separation between the rest of the components in the motherboard for less interference. I already mentioned the ELNA audio caps. Oh, I can't forget the actual headphone amp right here, because this is also able to drive 300 ohm impedance headphones, which is much higher end, and in fact, generally speaking, you need some pretty specialized audio hardware in order to be able to drive that type of headphones. So you have all that included right there. Again, that red line will actually light up when the board is actually powered up, so it also gives it a pretty cool look and effect. It extends all the way up the board and even up here to where your analog and SPDIF audio jacks are. Since we're already right here, let's go ahead and talk about the PCI Express options on the Maximus V Formula. So they're all right here. You'll notice the red slots are full-length 16X slots. The smaller black slots in the middle, these three right here, are X1 PCI slots. At the very top you have an X4 PCI Express slot. that is open-ended, so you can install a longer card there. Just bear in mind it will be limited to X4 connectivity. Now again, ASUS is positioning this board for the vast majority of enthusiasts, and the vast majority of enthusiasts are going to be running probably either a single video card, 2 video cards, or possibly even, say, for example, a quad SLI configuration with 2 dual GPU cards. This can support 3 video cards, but in that case it would only support Crossfire X 3-way. Actually, the NVIDIA spec does not allow you to run SLI or multi-card SLI via an X4 bus, even though it's PCI Express Gen 3. Now, PCI Express Gen 3 is actually a feature of the Ivy Bridge processor, so bear in mind that if you do install an older Sandy Bridge 2nd gen processor into this motherboard, that these PCI slots will default to Gen 2. But if you're going to go with an Ivy Bridge processor, they are fully PCI Express Gen 3 compatible, and if you're going to be running a single video card, you get 16X on the top slot. If you're going to be running 2, you'll get 8X and 8X. If you're running 3, you'll get 8X, 4X, and 4X. And bear in mind, PCI Express Gen 3 provides effectively double the bandwidth. It's also much more efficient at actually processing the data than PCI Express Gen 2, so you get some added benefit from there. They've gone with triple slot spacing here, so you'll notice ASUS does have some triple slot video cards in their DirectCU2 series, so you do have spacing for those if you're going to install 2 cards for a two-way Crossfire X or SLI solution. Of course, if you do want to do 4 GPUs and you want to stick with NVIDIA, you can go with a dual GPU card such as the GTX 690. You can, of course, support 2 of those. And then another item that is right down here is actually a PLX chip, and this is going to provide additional PCI Express lanes. But ASUS has done some testing, and they determined that actually you can introduce some latency by trying to add additional PCI Express lanes. You get 16 by default from an Ivy Bridge processor, and what this is going to do is not provide you actually additional PCI Express lanes for your video card. That's going to provide additional PCI Express lanes for other stuff. So if you've really maxed out your peripheral controller hub by plugging in a bunch of serial ATA stuff, or you got a lot of connectivity running in through I/O in the back, it's going to make sure that none of that is going to interfere with the actual latency for your PCI Express bus, so your video cards are going to get lots and lots of bandwidth. Moving over here to the right side of the board, you'll notice a handsome black heatsink, and that is right above the Z77 chipset, which controls a lot of the connectivity on the board. Specifically, there is an integrated peripheral controller hub in there, which has a serial ATA controller. That controls the top 4 of these serial ATA ports. So top 2 here, actually you're only SATA revision 2, 3 gigabit per second ports on the board, controlled by the chipset. You also have these 2 right here, SATA revision 3, 6 gigabit per second ports, also controlled by the chipset. All these are compatible with the Z77 goodness, such as Intel Smart Response technology. If you're wondering where the other SATA Rev 2 ports are that are controlled by this chipset, one of them is in the eSATA port up on the back, and the other one is goes to that mSATA connector that I showed you on the little riser card. The bottom 4 here are also SATA revision 3, 6 gigabit per second. Those are controlled by an add-on as media controller. Moving up above the serial ATA, we have a 19/20 pin USB 3.0 header, so you can use that to connect to your front panel USB 3.0 ports. There's the fan header that I showed you at the beginning. Right next to that is your 24-pin main motherboard power connector, and you'll notice all along the side of the board right here you have CPU LED, DRAM LED. These are actually your post LEDs, and as the board goes through the UEFI and does your power on self-test, each of these will light up. If the board happens to halt on any particular thing, such as your boot device or your DRAM, that LED will stay lit, and that will help you do some troubleshooting to determine what the issue might be and help get your system up and running. Moving up above those, we have this little header right here. That's for Ln2 mode, so if you happen to be using some exotic cooling solutions and actually you're dipping down below -10 degrees Celsius, you got a little header you can switch over for that. That changes the behavior of the board. Right next to that, you actually have all of these contact points. So if you like to use a multimeter and get really granular readouts for your different voltages on the GPU and the DRAM and whatnot, you can connect your multimeter right there. Right above that you have a Go button, which has various functionality. It can be used as a Mem OK button if you're having any trouble getting your memory recognized properly. It can also do sort of a high-level UEFI reset, so kind of like clear CMOS, but not quite as destructive. You can use it to reset voltage and frequency parameters for the CPU and the memory without actually clearing out your entire CMOS. So pretty useful feature right there. You also have, of course, surface-mounted power and start and reset buttons, which is very handy if you're doing an outside-of-the-box build and you want to easily be able to boot the system or reset it. Next to that, you have this switch here, which says slow mode, which should be off. Slow mode is again made for exotic cooling, so if you are going to be using this board for some extreme purposes, if you're really an enthusiast and you like to pour liquid nitrogen on top of your CPU, that's what that's for. Again, changes a lot of the performance of the board because it behaves differently when you're in really, really low temperatures. Next to that's the chassis fan I mentioned at the beginning, and then of course you have a debug LED that gives you a Q code. That's again for troubleshooting when you're getting your system up and running. There's a bunch of codes listed out in the manual, so you can more accurately determine what the problem might be, so you can fix it and get your system set up. Below that, you have your memory slots. The Ivy Bridge processor, as well as Sandy Bridge, has a DDR3 internal memory controller that controls your memory, of course. It supports dual-channel memory, and as of the filming of this video, this board supports 32 gigabytes of memory. If you're using 8 gig DIMMs, you're going to want to use at least pairs of 2, and you will want to use the colored pairs to make sure that you're going to be running in dual channel mode, because that will give you much more bandwidth than running in single channel mode. Now, Ivy Bridge processors really up the ante as far as overclock memory goes. So supported speeds officially goes up to 1600 now from Intel. Of course, you can use the XMP if you get XMP, Extreme Memory Profile Capable Memory. You can use that in the UEFI to really easily dial in your memory's rated speeds. And then overclock speeds, 1866 all the way up to DDR3 2800 overclock speeds. Again, that's going to vary based on the memory you have. It's going to vary based on the chip you have installed and the strength of the IMC on that. And unofficially here, this is just based on on JJ telling me some pre-information. I hope he doesn't get mad, but if you've ever heard of 16 gigabyte DDR3 DIMMs, who knows, I haven't seen one yet, but this board may be possible to store up to 64 gigabytes of memory. That's unofficial at this point because I don't think they have 16 gig DIMMs to validate with, but Little Bird told me, and I just thought I'd point it out here. To the left of that is your 1155 socket. So again, this is going to support Sandy Bridge processors. Chances are you're going to be going with an Ivy Bridge processor. It gives you a lot more functionality, especially with the Pci Express Gen 3 and whatnot, but there's your standard LGA 1155 socket right there. And around that is one of the coolest things on this board, which is Fusion Thermo. This is the combo patent-pending VRM Cooler. Now, VRM is voltage regulation modules, and that is all your MOSFETs, capacitors, and chokes that are under this heatsink right here. And they've done a lot with the power delivery. Give me just a moment. So this is what ASUS is calling the Extreme Engine DigiPlus 2, digital power delivery, and ASUS was sort of a pioneer in digital power delivery on motherboards. There's a lot more digital power delivery in a lot of motherboards these days than there was when it first came out, but what this is providing is digital power delivery to the VRMs, to the CPU, to the iGPU that's in the CPU, as well as to the memory. And you can count the phases right here, but really what it comes down to is the quality of components that are included here. And here's where we come to a key factor that's actually all over this board, which is all of these Nichicon caps right there. These are black metallic capacitors. They're Nichicon GT caps. They're super high quality. If you look at the ASUS line of motherboards, they're really careful about the components that they choose. And actually in the Maximus V series, even as compared to the high end of their regular channel boards, these are all completely new, higher end components than those. That's not to say that their regular channel boards, there's anything wrong with those, but they really want to be sure that in whatever thermal environment you're running this board in, that you're going to have nice, steady, stable power delivery so you can get higher overclocks, so your board will run stable, so you have a longer lifespan of your board. And these capacitors are rated to operate 5 times longer lifetime than standard solid caps. They're rated to operate at very high temperatures, and they go hand in hand with also the chokes and the MOSFETs that are actually under this right here. You'll notice the big fat chokes, the square items right there, and those are really high amperage chokes. And again, that just goes back to the power delivery, and not just the power delivery here, but also keeping that power delivery system cool. And keeping the power delivery system cool is the Fusion Thermo cooler right here, which I've mentioned a few times, but now I'm going to talk about more seriously because, well, there you have it. This is a combo VRM cooler. So essentially, this is patent pending. I should mention that again. This will work in a water cooling environment. It will also work in an air cooling environment, and that's by virtue of the heat sinks that you have scattered all throughout here. So if you're using, say, a standard air cooler on your CPU, it's going to provide airflow over that. It's going to keep your componentry under there nice and cool. There is a heat pipe, an internal heat pipe that runs up along the entire length of this VRM cooler right here, and that's going to give you sort of your basic air cooling disbursement of heat as air moves over it. You also have these 3/8 inch barbs right here, and you have a second pipe going through here. It's copper and nickel, so that's going to effectively remove any fears that you might have if you are into water cooling of, for instance, corrosion. They've done a great job with the implementation of it. It runs along the outside of here, so it actually has a softer curve towards the top, so it's again going to provide better flow for your liquid cooling solution. You can route that. There's lots of different options you have, of course, if you're into liquid cooling. You have a ton of options with configurations. Now your optimal cooling is going to actually be to have your inlet right here and your outlet over here. That way you're going to get cooler liquid flowing across the actual CPU power delivery area right here. However, again, I asked JJ about this, and he said that he's tested it both ways, using this side as an inlet or this side as an inlet. Both ways work great. You just get sort of a marginal improvement if you're going to be using this side as an inlet. So really cool feature right there. It's something that ASUS has dabbled with in the past, but they've really seemed to have mastered it with this Fusion Thermo implementation right here. And if you're into water cooling, being able to easily drop in a water block for your VRMs, well, that's a really nice feature to have. So there you have it. Let's move on to right up above the Fusion Thermo solution. You have dual power connectors here for your supplemental CPU power. You have an 8-pin as well as a 4-pin. Again, more power to the CPU, more overclocking, more stability. And that about wraps it up, except for the I/O. I did want to mention one more thing. This little header right here, I showed you guys earlier, that's that MPCIe combo. And I showed you guys the wireless card on that. Not just dual band wireless, also Bluetooth 4.0. And now we're coming down to the end. Inputs and outputs on the back. You have a clear CMOS button. You have an r.o.g connect button. You can use that for r.o.g connect functionality. You can also use this for USB Bios Flashback, which is an awesome feature that ASUS has implemented starting with their Z77 line. You can plug in a USB device right there with a BIOS file with a proper name on it, and without a CPU or any memory installed, with the button, you can reference the manual for how that actually functions, but you can update, flash your BIOS, and it's a great feature, especially if you have a corrupted BIOS or if you don't have the proper hardware to install and you do want to update your BIOS. Above that you have 3 USB 2.0 ports. Next to that you have 2 USB 3.0 ports. You actually have 4 USB 3.0 ports total, all those blue ones. Above that is your eSATA port. Again, that connects to the Z77 chipset. That's a SATA Rev 2 3 gigabit per second port. You also have a Toslink connector right here, and that's for an optical SPDIF in. I'm sorry, that's an output right there. You also have a HDMI and display port, and that's for the iGPU in your Sandy Bridge or Ivy Bridge processor. You also have an Intel NIC, so really high quality integrated network right there. And then finally, your 8-channel audio outputs, as well as your line in and an SPDIF, also Toslink optical input. And we're going to finish off here with a look at the THUNDERFX module, and again, this is included if you buy the Maximus V FORMULA / THUNDERFX version of this motherboard. It's really a value-added item. I believe this might be for sale separately, but don't quote me on that. And essentially, this is a digital to analog converter. It is made to reside outside and away from your computer, and that's again going to isolate it from any interference and noise. And really you can use this with your computer, but you can also use it for other implementations as well. So especially if you're a headphone enthusiast, this is going to be a great feature for you to have. So just looking at the I/O on the front, you have a power indicator light, of course. You have a little knob here so you can switch between PC mode, Xbox 360 mode, as well as PlayStation 3 mode. You also, of course, have a volume knob, so you can adjust the volume. Master, voice, and game LED lights. You have a gold-plated headphone jack. You also have a gold-plated microphone jack. And if you are going to be using this with a headset, you have a really cool feature over here on the left. So you'll notice that ENC and the little microphone. That is environmental noise cancellation. So this device is going to actively monitor your environmental noise, and as you are speaking into your microphone from your headset, it's actually going to cancel out your environmental noise. So essentially that means that anyone who's listening to what you're saying is going to be able to hear you more clearly versus the environmental noise of everyone else who's around you yelling you at what a sweet headshot that was. Finally, you also have an Xbox 360 voice input right there, and that is actually what this little cable is for that I showed you with the accessories towards the beginning. Flipping around to the back here, you'll notice you also have RCA input jack, so if you do want to use this for standard RCA connection, you can use that. You also have a USB port, of course, and again, THUNDERFX USB connector right there. So if you're going to connect this to a computer, you can do so via just the USB connector, and you can use this as an external audio device. You can also use the inputs here and use that to process your audio, and it's going to give you a much cleaner and much better audio experience. This also has crazy high 120 decibel signal-to-noise ratio, has a built-in 300 ohm impedance headphone amplifier, so it supports those high-end headphones with 300 ohms impedance. And finally, also has THUNDERFX Game EQ, which is exclusively a PC-based feature. So if you're going to plug this into your computer, you can use the Game EQ software to set up different profiles for different games that you play. And it has 4 dedicated auto effects tuning. So essentially, if you're playing, for instance, a first-person shooter, you can adjust the audio levels for talking or for gunshots or for footsteps, and give you a more immersive gaming experience. And that's going to wrap it up for this video, everyone. Once again, this has been the ASUS Maximus V FORMULA motherboard for Intel 2nd and 3rd Gen core processors with the 1155 socket, the Z77 chipset, and all that other stuff I just talked about. Also, this is the THUNDERFX version that comes with the included THUNDERFX external digital to analog converter, also available without, so bear that in mind. And that's all. I'm Paul with Newegg TV. If you enjoyed today's video, you can head over to our Newegg YouTube channel, and don't forget to subscribe for more tech videos. Thanks a lot for watching, and we'll see you next time.